Hey guys, Sundown here. This is going to be my chapter review to One Piece 912 Amigasa Village. Really good chapter, and it was just a solid chapter all the way through. What we got to see of Wano was good, and what we got to see of Wano was surprising. But let's talk about the cover page first. So we start with this really well drawn cover spread for the 21st anniversary of One Piece. I think it is. It should be 21st anniversary of One Piece, and we have Usopp as kind of like a marksman, Robin as a equestrian net, I think, as a jockey, Chopper as a boxer, Frankie dunking on people as a basketball player, Sanji as a swimmer, Nami as a tennis player, Brook as a footballer, Zoro as a baseball player, and Luffy as a karate practitioner. And that was all well and good, and I thought that was a really well drawn cover spread. But let's get onto the chapter and talk about exactly what went down. So going back to the story, the chapter starts with Luffy telling the dazed Tama that Ace is dead. Let me just put my phone on silent. So yeah, he tells the dazed Tama that Ace is dead. Before continuing, that it's worth noting that the title of the chapter, Amigasa Village, refers to a straw hat worn by ninjas and travelers. And we've seen this before. You would have seen it in loads of like Japanese styled movies or even Chinese style movies, where a traveler will be wearing this kind of like triangular with a circular base kind of hat as they travel. And it's just really to protect them from the elements, the rain, and I'm not sure if there's something symbolic about it in Japanese culture as well. You'd have to ask someone from there. Now, as you'd expect, the news of Ace's death totally jars Tama to the point where she loses consciousness but is still crying in kind of like her unconscious state. And obviously this triggers Hitetsu, who is the Tengu looking master of Tama. That's his name. His name is something like Tenguyama Hitetsu. And it turns out he's in actual fact a bladesmith, someone who might come in handy he might come in real handy later on in the arc, depending on how skillful he is as a bladesmith. And seeing who his ancestor is, we find out a tiny bit just from here. He could be a very valuable asset to the Straw Hat crew. Now he chastises Luffy for his tactless approach in telling Tama that Ace was dead, feeling that it was neither the time nor the correct way to tell the girl of his death. Although I agree with Hitetsu here, I also agree with Luffy here that though I feel he could have been a little bit more careful in the words he used rather than just saying, yeah, he's dead. I was like, you should have thought about that just a little bit. But, he still had to tell her there and then that, he's dead. There's no point waiting for someone that's not going to come. So he wanted her to know earlier rather than later that he's not going to be coming. Now, another point to note is that Hitetsu is a pretty female doll collector. I have no idea really what that entails as of yet, but a detail like that must be important if Oda put it in the little Oda box he had for Hitetsu. So I assume it's going to be something that comes into play later. Now, after Luffy tells Hitetsu who he is and vice versa, Hitetsu tells him who he is. Hitetsu tells Luffy that he is also waiting for someone. And I'm not sure if that someone is different from Ace. I assume it is because he didn't mention Ace as being the person that he was waiting for. So there's someone that Hitetsu himself is also waiting for. So we had Tama waiting in this village for Ace, and we have Hitetsu himself waiting for someone else. He then tells Luffy about this Amigasa village, this village of the braided straw hats or something like that, and how a then new headliner, this was 4 years ago, for Kaido's crew, X-Drake destroyed the village and defeated the 5 samurai who guarded it. Actually, no, this wouldn't have been 4 years ago. This was after Ace had come and everything. So this was relatively, possibly recently, within the last couple years, possibly. So yeah, so X-Drake, now one of Kaido's headliners, destroyed the village and defeated the 5 samurai who guarded it. Hitetsu tells us that the entirety of Wano is now pretty much a lawless wasteland, save the flower capital where Orochi, the shogun, resides. He blames the wastelands on Kaido, possibly because of his factories and all the toxins and chemicals that are released because of that. And Hitetsu then tells us the story of Ace in Wano, or at least teases us with some of it. And this is what happened actually 4 years ago. So I mistook that for the X-Drake story. That wasn't 4 years ago. That was more recent. So 4 years ago, the Amigasa village was in famine and people were dying due to starvation. People actually did die due to starvation. Then a pirate ship washed ashore with fatigued pirates on board. The villagers tied up these pirates and stole basically their supplies and drank their water and basically ate their fill and everything like that. So they survived because of Ace's ship. And the pirate turns out to be Ace and his crew at that time. I assume it would have been part of it would have been his second division essentially under Whitebeard, but it wasn't like his whole second division. It was just a few of them. And instead of killing the villagers once they broke out of their bonds, Ace befriended them in a very Ace-like manner. You know, he wasn't ever the kind of, you ate my food, so I'm gonna murder you type of guy. So it was here that Tama grew attached to Ace as he stayed with the Amigasa villagers for a few weeks. Pleased by this memory of Ace, Luffy readies himself to kind of pay back Tama for the food that she gave him by finding her a doctor. So Hitetsu gives Luffy a kimono to wear so he doesn't stand out, telling him to find someone to lend him money for the doctor's expenses once they get to the town. He also tells Luffy that if he found Hitetsu's allies, so Hitetsu does have allies somewhere, they would treat Tama for free. He also tells Luffy that he can't follow Luffy into town for certain reasons, possibly being one of many samurai in the country in direct opposition to the Shogun and Kaido, but also probably more important than we know, maybe a former retainer of Odin's or something like that. But yeah, it's key here to note that Hitetsu does have allies, so maybe he's also in this movement that Kinemon and Kanjuro and Raizo and all that are part of, and maybe he's waiting to spring upon Kaido and his men and stuff like that. So Luffy then picks up a sword, saying it looks very samurai of him to carry it around. Hitetsu shits himself here, saying the sword is one of the 21 great grade blades forged by his ancestor Kotetsu. Now this is the key part here, because we remember that Kotetsu is the person that forged the Sandai, Nidai, and Shodai Kotetsu, or Kitetsu. And the name of the blade that Luffy just happened to pick up is the Nidai Kitetsu, a cursed blade, and in the same line of blades of Zoro's, one of Zoro's blades, which is the Sandai Kitetsu, which is actually, I don't think it's a graded blade, but it's one of the many graded blades. It's a named blade, but it's not particularly famous. But you go 2 grades up, and there's the Nidai Kitetsu as one of the 21 great graded blades. So it's a very, very awesome blade that Luffy's carrying around right now. Now, ignoring the old Tengu's warnings, Luffy runs off with Tama and Nidai Kitetsu. And a point to note is that Hitetsu says that the Tengu guy, Hitetsu, it's very confusing because there's Sandai Kitetsu, Nodai Kitetsu, and then there's a guy called Hitetsu. But the Tengu guy, Hitetsu, says his personal katana is also world-renowned, a great blade, so that's possibly suggesting that he himself might be a great swordsman, or maybe it's just that he has a great blade being a very coveted bladesmith or something along those lines. So Luffy and Tama make their way on the back of the Komainu to find this doctor that Luffy wants to aid Tama with. On the way, Tama wakes up and starts hitting Luffy for lying about Ace's death, and he seems a bit shocked that both the Tengu guy, Hitetsu, and Tama didn't know, seeing as the Summit War was such a huge event that occurred in contemporary world history. And it turns out she asked Ace when he was in Wano to take her out to sea with him. And Ace, obviously felt that she was too young, she was too weak to take care of herself, telling her if by the time he returned, if she was like an enchanting kunoichi, that he would take her with him. And she kind of saw that as a promise. She kind of like nailed it on the coffin. She was like, okay, yeah, that's a promise. When you come back, I'll be a badass kunoichi, which is why she's aspiring to be a kunoichi, by the way. And that's why she's waiting for Ace to take her as a kunoichi onto his crew, and then out to sea with him. So she continues to wail on Luffy as they emerge through the bamboo forest, and they emerge into a literal wasteland. In the distance, we can see a gate, one of those, the Japanese style gates. It looks like a kanji for something, and what looks to be several factories in the back, smoke billowing out of the huge chimneys through the air. And we then see a huge boar being chased by a huge tiger, who in turn is being chased by this big ass crocodile shark hybrid. And Luffy wants to eat the creatures, but he's warned against this by Tama, who tells Luffy that the creatures are poisonous due to their drinking of the poisonous rivers and stuff like that, the poisonous waters around the area, which is all Kaido's fault because of the factories he has and the chemical toxins and stuff like that are being released into the waters around Wano. So Tama also tells us that there are 2 main attractions where the dark smoke burns. We have a quarry, and we have the factory where Kaido makes his weapons. Now Luffy is annoyed to hear that both the Shogun and Kaido have their own personal kind of farms where they have clean veggies, clean fruit, clean meat, clean fish, so they never go hungry, and they're never poisoned by their own food. But when she tells him this, Tama then slumps back into unconsciousness again, her fever getting worse, causing Luffy to hurry forwards. He slows down, however, when he hears someone shout, "Wait, woman," thinking it's his ever-lustful chef, Sanji. And I was laughing my ass off at this. I thought that was a golden reaction to hearing "Wait, woman." He was just like, wait, woman? Sanji? I was like, yo, this guy. So it looked like some of Kaido's men were harassing the woman, trying to get it on with the woman, but a lone swordsman enters the fray and destroys them while Luffy is watching. And the woman thanks the swordsman while the swordsman only has his mind set on sake, on getting some booze from Kaido's men. And she asks him, how can I repay you? And he's just like, just get me some booze. And she's just like, I ain't got nothing on me. So Luffy zooms in with his eyes, just looking in, and realizes that the swordsman is none other than his first mate. It's Zoro, just chilling there out in this wasteland. So it's been so long since these two have been together that I was really hyped for this moment, and I was really hyped to see how they would interact. But first, I'd like to talk about Zoro's outfit. He's wearing this kind of dark howdy over his light kimono with suns on the howdy and clouds at the bottom of his kimono. I'm not sure if that's normal, but that's just my description of it. And he has the top knot. He has a bottle of sake, kind of the traditional wooden bottle. His traveler's pouch and some kind of wheat in his mouth or something like that, with a piece of straw in his mouth. Zoro just looks the part at the moment. He looks like a proper like Ronin kind of character. He looks awesome, and I was really hyped to see him. And just seeing Luffy and Zoro in the same panel together again was awesome for me. Anyway, Zoro looks elated to see Luffy again, a sentiment Luffy shares, hugging Zoro after not having seen him for so long. He tells Luffy that he got separated from the crew, but he feels that they're all okay. He also feeds Luffy, telling him that there's an abundance of fish and meat around the area, and this is where Luffy tells him that the fish and meat around the area are poisoned, explaining why Zoro's stomach had been like hurting him for a while. Luffy may have more of an immunity to the poisons in both the fish and the meat due to his encounter with Magellan. However, the chapter ends with Basil Hawkins rolling in on both Zoro and Luffy, with both captains shocked at the other's presence. They're just like, what the hell are you doing here? And Hawkins is after Zoro, the nationally wanted Ronin, while Luffy is also being looked for by Kaido's men because of what happened on the beach where he arrived. So Hawkins drops the Straw Hats and ultimatum straight away. He's just like, join or run. You can either join the strong, hinting at Kaido, or you can run and we'll kill you. So I was like, yo, Hawkins, like, no, chill, bro. Like, you've met Luffy. Like, you're not friends, but you're supernovas, and you've not really got any beef with each other. You're part of the worst generation. How is this going to turn out? Is kind of Hawkins just low-key going to switch sides, like, right now? Like, is he gonna fight, pretend to kind of go all out, knock out his own men, and then kind of switch sides and be like, look, I need your help. Kid has been captured, and Apu is currently spying on Kaido or something like that. So maybe he's a double agent or something like that. So Zoro tells Luffy that Kinemon told him not to cause a commotion. And we just have Luffy saying like the most Luffy thing ever, like, we're just going to have to apologize to Kinemon later. I was like, this is so hype. So I definitely feel this chapter was awesome. I think a lot of you guys would have thought the same thing, but there are a couple things I have yet to discuss. So I definitely feel Hitetsu is more important to the story than we know right now, being a descendant of a legendary blacksmith, or bladesmith, sorry. And this also draws suspicion onto the worth of Tama and who she is. You know, you have this really important bladesmith, and then you have Tama who's under his care. She's got to be something more than she is right now. Especially being introduced so early into the story, it reminds you kind of like, you know, when we first saw Rebecca and we first saw Violet or Viola, and how their worth drastically increased the further and further we got to the end of Dressrosa. And the other question I have is, will Luffy actually use the Nidai Kitetsu, or the Nidai Kitetsu, I think it is, the sword that he's in possession of right now? The way he's drawing it seems professional enough. He's holding it correctly, I think. I've never drawn a sword, but we've never seen Luffy use a katana unless he was in kind of Nightmare Luffy form. This might serve for kind of like some sort of comedic purpose, but I actually want to see him try to use the blade. Also, Zoro should be able to eventually feel the presence of the Nidai Kitetsu, which is 2 grades above his own Sandai Kitetsu, so I assume Zoro's going to kind of inherit it. And the other thing I just want to make mention of, I saw it on Reddit, someone mentioned it in the One Piece subreddit. If you look at Sandai and Nidai Kitetsu, they both have the same crossguard, they both have the same kind of handguard on top of the hilt. And the sword that the Gandhi Gorosei guy carries also has the exact same crossguard, and we know that there are 3 of the Kitetsu line. So the only kind of logical conclusion to make here is that the Gandhi Gorosei guy might actually possess the Shodai Kitetsu, the number 1 Kitetsu, the first Kitetsu, and that's the most powerful of the Kitetsus. So that would be awesome. He might be a really, really badass swordsman, but that we'll only know that come with time. So let me know what you guys thought of this chapter. Let me know what you guys thought of this review. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you guys maybe tomorrow or Sunday when I release my My Hero Academia review. So I'll see you guys in a bit.